Dates are perhaps one of the most important elements in data analysis. They provide the context necessary to track trends, measure performance, and forecast future outcomes. In this video, I'll show you how to convert dates stored as text to temporal polars data types. Let's start by loading our data. So I'm going to come into this first cell here. You can see that we have our CSV file all lined up, ready to go. It's going to be our long form dates CSV file, and you're going to see what this looks like in just a minute. Let's go ahead and run it. And when we run the code, we get back our data frame with the date column in a string format. You'll notice that these dates are in a long format. This is probably a format that you're not used to seeing within a database, hopefully. And so what we're going to basically do is convert these to a cleaner and better format, one that could be actually used in a database. So as mentioned, we have dates stored as text in our polars data frame, and we want to convert them into temporal data types. And at this point, some of you might be wondering why I did not utilize the try parse dates parameter. The short answer is that it would not work on this data. If you would like to see why, you can go ahead and check out the documentation. There is a note there that says most ISO 8601-like formats can be inferred, as well as a handful of others. If it does not succeed, the column remains of data type pl.string. So that was from the documentation. Unfortunately, this is not an ISO standard, and it does not qualify as one of those handful of others mentioned in there. Most programming languages use a concept known as string parse time to convert strings to structured date and time objects. This often involves the use of format specifiers or patterns that dictate how the date and time components should be interpreted. Now I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit. Now I've included a list of common codes found in both Python and Rust, but it is important to note that each language may have its own format codes. In this case, I've also included a link to Chrono, which is the list of format codes that work in Rust. And Polars actually utilizes this list. So even if you're on the Python version of Polars, you need to use this list as your reference because that is what Polars is using. So the basic gist is that you can assemble any date format you need using these format codes. Now that we understand this, let's jump into using expressions. So let's go ahead and scroll down here just a little bit, and we're going to expand this cell here. Okay, so the first three expressions I'm going to talk about are these three right here. It's toDateTime, toDate, and toTime. Now, what you need to do for these ones is you basically need to have your format code ready. And so that's what I've done here is I've passed in the formatting code that is going to match the data that we read in. And I've aliased these columns. So basically we're going to be adding to our data frame here. It's going to add a date time, a date, and a time column so that we can kind of see those comparisons. And so let's go ahead and run that now. And in the output, we now have three new columns that have successfully parsed our long form date format. Now, there is another way to accomplish these same conversions, and that way is using the strptime expression. Now, I'm going to expand this here and scroll down just a little bit. Now, in my opinion, this is a far better expression to use. It actually consolidates all three of those functions that we used earlier into one, and you do have to pass one more extra parameter here, but I think it actually is very useful. So let's go ahead and run this. It's going to give us the exact same results as before. And I'm just going to make a prediction here that the strptime expression will eventually replace the other three functions. And so my recommendation would be to utilize this over the other ones that we did above. Okay, let's get into a more complicated task. We have another data set that contains random dates with different date formats. Our objective is to parse all of them successfully and unify the format. Now, it's unlikely that something like this would occur with good data intake, but we're assuming that these dates were pulled in a separate data cleaning task, perhaps using regular expressions. With that in mind, let's read in our data. So I'm going to expand this here and scroll down just a little bit. So there's a lot going on. We're first going to read in our data. Let's go ahead and do that. And in the output, we see that our dates are all over the place. So there's different formats. You can see a couple ISO formats. There's a couple month, day, year, month, day. Just different formats that are kind of messy. And so we're going to try to unify these together. So just to explain what's going on here, what we're doing is we're using a coalesce function, and then we're testing a bunch of different formats against our column here. So what this is basically going to do is check all of these different types. You can see we've got an ISO format, some month, day, year, and day, month, year formats. Those are all going to be checked, and then it's going to take the first non-null value and place that as the value for the column. So we're going to create a new column here, and it's going to be a unified format. Let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is much better to look at. You can definitely see that, going through that and cleaning everything up makes it a lot easier to read. There is a little caveat that I want to put in here, and a potential problem that you may need to address. This first row here could be read as day, month, year, or month, day, year. And so that is going to be a problem that you might need to work out. One way that we can do that is by using this concat.list function, which will basically do the exact same thing we did previously, but rather than returning the first non-null value, it's just going to give us a list of all of the values that were given when these were tested against. So let's go ahead and just display what that looks like here. And you can see that we have a bunch of nulls for most of the columns and just one value for certain formats that it matched on. But that first row does have two formats that it did match on. And so the order of that is going to be really important and potentially a problem for you. So however you decide to fix this issue is going to be up to you. Perhaps you kind of have an indication for which one should be first, but maybe you want to just remove it altogether. In any case, we've taken a fairly comprehensive look at the capabilities Polars has for parsing dates from strings. And that is all we have for this video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat below, and we'll catch up with you at the next one.